Okay, here we are at the Bring Out Your Lead event at War Games Foundry, and with me today is the myth, the legend that is Mr. Tony Yates.
I wouldn't go that far, but you said
Well,
it anyway.
I've said it, so it must be true.
It must be true if you've said it then, way.
So, Tony, tell us a bit about why you're here and what this is all about.
Well,
this event is all about.
The event is the probably the collection of people that's on the internet who know, and they do know each other personally, but they seem to gather on the internet, and they've decided that they should have a gathering of their skills and their armies and their enthusiasm, I suppose. Mm-hmm. I think this is year 5 or 6, so I've been to them all, and it's a meeting of people of like-minded engineers of old Warhammer or old fantasy, not necessarily Warhammer, and they bring their wonderful collections of toy soldiers, which astonish me every year. Their enthusiasm and their skills in model making and technical expertise, to me, is astonishing. And to bring it all in one place, we have old, young, new, people who just come to look, people who just come to play games, people who really are infused by the hobby. And I think coming here infuses them to carry on their hobby and enjoy it as they do. I always think that it's when you come away from an old hammer, is the same vibe we used to get when we used to go away from old conventions. You were enthused to buy toy soldiers. Yeah. You were enthused to go and paint. You're enthused to create, and some of the things that the lads have, you look at it and you think, it's amazing. It's an amazing event to come to view what people will put on, and the collections from, I don't know. I mean, the big 40k game they've got going. There must be, 25, 30 people playing that, who've all brought things, all playing on the same table, no confusion, no argument, and they're all just getting on with it. And they get that kick from it. And that's been the same for, I'd say, for a long time, that you look at some of the spectacles that's put on, and you'll go back and you'll take a picture of something else, because you've missed the two goblins having a fight in the street, you've missed the ship that's chucking a man into a shark. And that's really what, I think Old Hammer is. It's not, oh, well, these people can afford to buy old hammer figures, they've managed to find them, no, they've just got them and they like to use them and play with them. And coming to Old Hammer is a means to an end, and it's an event that's special to them. I mean, we've got guys coming from all over the world, America, Thailand, Spain, Germany, Poland, who, it's a long way to come to play a few games, but it's infusing them enough to do it, if you know what I mean, Wayne.
Absolutely, I completely understand. I mean, it's infusing me for a start.
Yeah.
One thing I have noticed though, and it's good. It's in no way, shape, or form a bad thing. There's old folks like you and me, veterans.
Yes.
And there's a load of new, younger players who are playing with figures that were cast and made before they were born.
A lot of the figures are cast and have been created, and a lot of the imagery and the books and the things way before, so a lot were born. Yeah. But I think they look at it as it's the depth, it's the past, it's what it was, but also I think that makes them want to play it, Wayne, and come and create and find them figures on eBay and find them figures that bring them by, or even find them at the bottom of the cupboard, is that they look at that and they think, they see a picture that it comes from a white dwarf or a magazine, a physical, not a video, not an internet, it's a physical picture of something. So when you look at that physical picture, you have got that miniature, and you look in the cabinets and you think, I remember when they first saw those Gene Stealer limousines, and they do exist. They thought they were a myth. So are they something that they've read or they've looked at and they can find that they can come and use? And there's other people who's got those goblins, who's got those skeletons, and what always strikes me is the level of detail they put into the army. It's lovely to see the painted anywhere on a table painted, but the depth and the competence of some of these is amazing.
Yeah, you see, my first introduction to the hobby really was Rogue Trader, when we thought Rogue Trader. Yeah. And they re-released that, and my wife very kindly bought me a copy, because I've got 4 copies of the original, 1 paperback, 2 hardbacks, and one of the hardbacks is starting to fall apart. Yeah. So she went out and bought it. Do you think that's had an effect? Are we looking back to when hobby life was simpler?
It's two things. It's the new guys picking up the old book and saying, what is all this about? And then they want to see the nostalgia. They want to go back to the roots of whatever it was. We now got some guys out there playing Laserburn, which is the predecessor to 40k, to the Imperial Commander, and they say it's great because these were rules that if you try to publish them today and trying to even explain to them, it's more maths and complex, but that's what we dealt with in them days. It was a mathematical equation to create an event, if I'm right. So them guys are buying the new book who haven't done anything. They see the 40k, they see the 8th edition, they see whatever, and they see this and think, well, this is where it all came from. Is it like stepping back in time, or is it creating what's then now? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I know exactly.
And you've got that in your hand. You can find those figures, you can find that Space Marine, but also you can enjoy the book that was wrote for creating your own universe. It wasn't telling you that you had to play with this army against this army. This said you can get that man and make him into a rogue trader. It was an open universe, and build your own terrain. An example is the Mad Max stroke post-apocalyptic game out there. How much? All that is scratch built. None of it is bought, but they're using stuff from all companies, different miniatures, sci-fi miniatures, and it all looks brilliant. But they also, what you just said when they've opened the Rogue Trader, I've seen it here. Pictures of, say, a war code dragging some slaves. I saw that here last year. A guy from Thailand had built it.
Really?
And he built the war code. With
exactly.
And it's just, and you see some of the jet bikes, and they are built.
Has anyone built the old deodorant bottle?
Yeah, well, I think they have.
Back in the day.
But that is what I think when they pick up the old Rogue Trader book or the new printing or whatever, they look at it. It was what we had when we opened it. You were inspired. Yeah. That is what inspiration makes you want to paint your figures, makes you want to play with your figures, makes you want to use your figures. Cool. But the guys who are as old as me and you know the world. Yeah. We've been brought up on that world. It's like when we see the guys paint figures to such a standard today. The new lads who can really paint figures, they've been brought up on Games Workshop. We were brought up on Umbro paints and tons of varnish. And that's where it works.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Tony.
Okay.
Right, here we are again at the Bring Out Your Lead event. I'm here with Garth James, who describes himself as almost an organiser for an anarcho-syndicalist commune of gamers. So Garth, tell us about the event, and then tell us what your view on Old Hamlet is. When is it? What years does it encompass?
Okay, the event. So Boyle is... the nice thing about Boyle that makes it different to everything else is because it's free. Right, so Foundry don't charge us, and therefore we don't have to charge anybody, and that changes the feel of it because you're not entitled to anything. You're when you come here to play, you're a guest of the Ansels, if you like, and that's how a lot of people see it. So there's a whole what they do, what the games that people play are so gentlemanly and wonderful because there's just no entitlement claims, and that's the thing that makes it right. So. And because we drive to make sure that there's no cost to anybody, the whole point is keeping money out. Even Foundry offer painting prizes, and you kind of just keep that value down. Just keep that value down. I don't want professional painters. It's not about that. Yeah. And for that reason, it's just got this wonderful kind of gentlemanly, civil, beautiful environment, right? And that's what these guys come for. You know, it's the least most competitive competition, if you like, because of that stuff. So that's what I think Boyle is. Right, it's just this beautiful, gentlemanly, non-competitive, like a vintage car rally for figures, right? You don't race them, you don't compete with them. That's what it is.
So what is Old Hamlet?
Oh man, what is Old Hamlet? So to me,
years wise, or
so I think there's two patterns of Old Hamlet. So the one is there's archaeo gaming, which is not a term I've made. Somebody else came up with that. So that's like the period definition. I think the other one is there's narrative gaming. So it's not competition driven. So you got 2,000 points, I got 2,000 points. It's narrative. There's a guy in a house, and he's got a name, and he's a priest, and there's a whole bunch of story, which you can do as much or as little as you want to with that, but it drives the story of the game. And actually, you could be given a game or playing a game where you're designed to lose. But it's the narrative, and you want to participate in that. So I say that there's two flavors because you'll get narrative gamers who don't have the 80s figures, and then you'll get people who are interested in the collecting, and but they're still you still get a sort of a competitive mentality, but with old figures. So that's the two splits. Where do I find myself? I'm in the Venn diagram of the two. To me, Old Hammer is 1985 to about 1994. Right. Third edition and fourth edition fantasy for me. And so I make sure I've got all that stuff, but then I very much focus on narrative gaming. So I don't want to hear about points necessarily. I paint things because they're cool, and then like the tank game that you saw. I don't even know what those guns were, but they fitted on the tank beautifully, and we made it up as we were there. And that's kind of, it's not necessarily about casual rules, but just it's fun. It's because that's what it is. And if you're a serious tactician, well, you've got to deal with what it is, not with what the points say or the rules say.
But it's not an event or a concept that's entirely tournament led. It's more of a fun environment where you just get to play with toy soldiers.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's nice if in your game you're playing to win. But not at the cost of rules, and you get these people who kind of interpret, but the words say, it's not in plural, so I think you could, there's none of that. In fact, people are almost too generous. You find it's like, no, you can hit me again. No, hit me again. I'm sure it's a penetrating shot. All this kind of stuff. It's very giving, very generous.
Okay. Yeah. And what isn't Old Hammer?
Oh man, punching with what isn't Old Hammer? I think is being a rules lawyer.
Right.
Exactly that. So applying the rules over what you're looking at. So so in fantasy it comes up often where people got like wheel infantry, and so you might clip the infantry by this, and so then people will say, well, it's a clip. If you start applying the rules, you can see what my intent is. We know what we want the narrative or the cinema event to be, but I can't do it because 6mm of base is that's not Old Hammer. That's the thing that we frown on.
And in terms of figures, when does Old Hammer stop? 2000?
That's a good question. Actually, I've never thought about that. I would say, maybe 2000, maybe a little past, because some of the figure ranges ran for a long time. So I guess it's hard to boundary that, but I'd say so. The intent. I think when the plastic stuff came out, because the plastic stuff, which is awesome because it's multi-pose, you can make. But it's all very heartless.
Yes.
And that's, I think, for me, that's what it is. It's metal figures that have been made probably out of one-piece molds, because there's you can see the artist loves the thing.
And there's the character there, isn't there?
Exactly, there's character.
Whereas, even with my 1980s plastic guard, which I love, Imperial Guard, every single face is the same. Whether they've got a helmet on and shades. But all my commanders are metal because you still got some character there. Cool. Thank you very much, Garth James.
Cool.
So I'm here in the marquee for the Bring Out Your Lead event with Drew Day Williams, top-looking sculptor. Might be looking to sell some of his sculpts soon. Why are you here?
Oh, mostly because I didn't get here last year or the year before. I've been meaning to return here. I was here in 2015 and I enjoyed it so much I simply had to return. It's just, the nexus of Old Hammer, and frankly, I'm one of those people who's kind of tired of the way Games Workshop runs their business these days. And lots of people feel that way. And
in what regard?
Matters of nostalgia. Oh, just the technical achievement of a lot of the plastics and the resins that they're doing today is clearly there. They are top of their game. But the spontaneity, the risk-taking that was present in the early years of Games Workshop, that's missing, and that's what I miss. It's part nostalgia. A lot of it just has to do with my appreciation as an artist. I just loved seeing the way the hand of the artist was present. Now, a lot of the work that you see coming out of Games Workshop, a lot of it seems to be decided by committee, and a committee I don't necessarily agree with. There's shining stars, and this past year or two, I really like the direction that Games Workshop's management's taking, aesthetically. But even so, as I walked through the store last week, I'm here in the Nottingham area, so of course I'm going to go to Warhammer World. But I really wasn't terribly excited. Nothing there excited me. It made me lift my eyebrow and say, oh wow, that's challenging. Oh wow, that's interesting. But nothing that said, oh, I've got to have that. That just isn't there for me.
So for you, Old Hammer is
there's more character, more opportunity, more openness with
Yes.
the older stuff than there is with the more modern stuff.
It's the principles of Oldhammer that I enjoy most is the one where a table is understood that if it's to be well run, it should or could have a referee to help create a narrative. With Oldhammer, in my mind, it's more about narrative. It's about the story and storytelling. The advent of contests, what do you call them? When people would go in and they'd compete to see who would be better. I'm sorry, but these games aren't really that good. I mean, the rules are clumsy. They're made to have an interesting novel storytelling adventure. They're not made like chess. It's not even. It's never going to be balanced. To pretend that it's going to be balanced is just a farce. That's why you end up with a lot of people throughout the past couple decades spending all of their time trying to figure out how to get the best list, the most competitive edge.
The marksman.
Yeah, and always trying to find the figurine that will justify how they can win a game in a contest. And I'm sorry, no, that's never actually going to work. The company is just playing you for a fool. They're just like throwing something out there that's quote-unquote official to trick you into buying it because for today it's going to give you some imaginary edge over a contest that really is not fair. It's not a measure of skill, I'm sorry.
No tournament player, did you?
No, never. The only tournament I ever played what annoyed me so badly, I turned around and sold off my 3,000 point Skaven army. Just sold it off for $200. Said bye. And of course I regretted that because that was an original Just Goodwin Skaven army, all metal, end to end, and I missed that army. That was a mistake.
So you're a sculptor as well.
Yes.
Are you inspired by the Oldhammer stuff? I can see some of the trolls. They're very inspired.
Well, being an Oldhammer player back when it was Newhammer in the day certainly does influence me. I began sculpting soon after I graduated from my illustration degree back in Baltimore, way back in the mid-90s. And most of it really kicked off when Bobby Jackson, an American sculptor, and Chaz Elliott, they found me. They were working together with me with a company called Demon Blade Games, and they showed me the ropes. At least they started me on the path. So anything I do wrong now, it's all their fault. But yeah, they're my senseis. I worship them, and they gave me the head start. And I just pretty much stayed at home and worked the rest out myself.
Okay. So do you sculpt for one particular company now, or do you sculpt for any company?
No, I worked for a few corporations back in the yachts, but I quickly realized that I mostly just want to stick with the small players. It left me with more freedom, just about the same amount of money, and I could deal with different faces. And I just offered my services to small companies left, right, and center. It works best for me that way. When I worked with the larger toy companies or larger miniature companies, there were more hassles than it was worth to me. And the one or two times where I was invited to work in-house, I felt uncomfortable. I'm much more comfortable on my own, just working solitary. A lot of us in the gaming world, both as hobbyists and as sculptors, we're the kind of oddballs who would rather just be left alone in a lot of large stretches of time. And this is the kind of job where I could make the living that I need to make while not having to deal with a lot of people.
Did you sculpt for UK companies as well as US companies?
Mostly for the UK market at the very least, if not mostly for UK companies. I've been doing a lot of work for Richard Scott, Otherworld. A lot from this past year has been with him. A bulk of my work has actually been the US, only by relationship to Dwarven Forge. I've been doing. My name is not attached to a lot of the work at Dwarven Forge, but when you see their latest Kickstarters for the past 3 years, a good chunk of the material that you see in their images and their videos for the latest products, my hand is all over that. The few people that do more work there would be Eli. There's a few people that work in-house there as well, so it's certainly a lot of their work as well. But
do you have a sort of standard rate when it comes to sculpting? Or?
My rates?
Yeah.
Oh, that's top secret.
Oh, no. What I mean is, say tomorrow, my boss said, what games illustrator said, I want you to sculpt figure for me. This is what I want, but the rest of that, it's up to you. Which is kind of what we do with our sculptures at the minute.
Yeah.
Would you say to him, right, well, it's a 28 mil sculpt, it will cost you $170 or whatever? Or would it be on a project-by-project basis? How much detail?
I just handle flat rates for regular figures. I charge relatively cheaply for monsters, because for me, most monsters are just about the same level of effort as the smaller figures. I don't charge much less for the even smaller figures because it's, again, still about the same effort as a regular size. If it's a really huge monster, yeah, those prices will go larger. And the other thing is that when people engage me for group sets, if it's really large, I might ask for 50 front and then develop over the course of the month and then deliver at the end of that month. And I'll reduce the rate a little bit because it's such a large set.
Right.
But mostly it's all based around like a core base price for a normal 28 mil. That's all there really is.